Network production.
Modern Eater Network production.
Hell yeah. Let's get this party hopping. No more milling around. Get ready to have a mash ton of fun. Here are your hosts, Andrew Moore and Jeff Tyler.
Hey, this is Andrew Moore, and I'm here with my co-host Jeff Tyler, and this is an exclusive Beer Craft. We're live here at the Craft Brewers Conference in Denver.
Yep.
And we're very excited that we're sitting here with Mr. Charlie Papazian himself.
The Godfather of craft beer. Thanks for taking the time to come on our show. I know you're a super busy guy. We have to have our security team make sure that you don't get ambushed while you're sitting here. But really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us today.
Yeah, pleasure. The only thing missing is a beer right now. But
I know.
We'll get to that
Sitting
later.
in a coffee shop,
We'll get to that. Yeah.
Unfortunate.
That's
yeah,
okay.
there's beer everywhere, but we'll find some. So for those of you who don't know who Charlie is, he's a brewer, he's an author, he's kind of the pioneer of the craft beer industry. You've spent almost the last 40 years of your career and life advocating for craft beer. You're the founder of the American Homebrewers Association. You're the president of the Brewers Association. You helped found the Great American Beer Fest, the World Beer Cup. The list just kind of goes on and on. We could spend the whole time talking about your resume, but I think one thing that I'd love to talk to you about a little bit today is, we're sitting here at the Craft Brewers Conference. I don't know if you would have even imagined that this conference would be existing 40 years ago when you first got into the beer industry. Can you give people a snapshot of what beer was in the United States back in the 70s? I think it was the 70s, late 70s.
Yeah.
When you got started.
I made my first homebrew myself in 1970.
1970.
When I was a university student at University of Virginia, and my skills were coveted by my friends, and they wanted me to teach them how to make beer. And when I moved out here to Colorado, people in this community said, "Hey, you know how to make beer. Help us learn how to do it. We're
Right.
into it." And it was, the whole thing emerged because of frustrated beer drinkers that wanted to be enthusiastic about beer, but there was nothing to be enthusiastic about.
Right.
And they were just beginning to discover there was a world of beer out there because people were starting to travel a little bit.
Right.
Why is our beer so monotonous?
Yeah.
I think today a lot of commercial brewers, Jeff and I, we started out as home brewers.
Right.
And everyone sort of has a story that got them into home brewing. I love doing this. So, how did you know this is what you wanted to do? How did you acquire those skills?
Yeah, how do you learn when the book, The Complete Joy of Homebrewing, wasn't written yet? How do you get started? Who do you look towards?
Well, how do you get? In those days, you got started because it was something different. It was against the law.
Right.
So that was
it's a little
kinda
scandalous.
cool.
Yeah.
But nobody really cared because nobody cared about beer, let alone home brewers. And it was kind of like this thing that nobody knew what it was. It had this legacy left over from Prohibition about being made in the bathtub and exploding bottles and stuff you drank during Prohibition. But we were discovering that there was stuff like German lager and English ales which nobody had ever heard of. Never, let alone IPAs and all the myriad of variety styles we have now. And so how do you get started? You're right, there wasn't the internet. It was a telephone or a letter and magazines, and there wasn't anything published on it, no books. The books that were out there were very technical and geared to making hundreds of thousands of barrels of adjunct corn lager.
Right.
And so it was, we taught ourselves. There was a few core homebrew pamphlets out there, and it was a reasonable start. It was good enough that we ended up making decent beer that we wanted to continue. But every batch we learned from, and the key was, and which is still the key now, 40, 50 years later, was just the network of individuals who were enthusiastic in their home brewing that that were into sharing what they learned.
Right.
And trading information and knowledge and tasting each other's beers and learning. And we, in those days it was at a pretty basic level of learning, and now we're at another level, but we're still sharing information and collaborating, and that's the key.
That's the great thing with the trouble with learning how to make beer by trial and error is that it takes so long to make each batch. But when you have a whole network of collaborative brewers who are simultaneously making those batches, you can really cut down the amount of time it takes to figure out what works and what doesn't work. So I think it's great that the beer community still holds on to a lot of that sense of collaboration today. This conference is a great example of it because there's seminars on all sorts of things from sales to technical brewing, and everyone's just trying to share information to create better beer in the U.S.
Well, along that theme, I know you guys do other themes along the lines of craft, whether it's craft foods or craft communities. And,
right.
The most successful craft communities, whether it's coffee or ice cream or kombucha or whatever, the ones that really take off and really excel with quality and diversity and fun experience for their customers are the ones that collaborate and share their information, thinking, getting it, like we can raise the awareness of what we're doing and teach people how to appreciate what we do together rather than individually,
Yeah, it's a great mentality.
Yeah, and that education and that sense of collaboration was like one of the big, I think, like selling points for for me, and I think for a lot of other people to get into the industry. It was a different kind of business. It didn't feel
as like cutthroat,
stereotype.
like American corporate culture. You kind of think about that having one sort of, driving standard of just compete and be better than everyone else, but not necessarily work with everyone else to make the whole industry grow. And I think a lot of it kind of stems too from this kind of small beer versus big beer mentality. When you start to shift away from the homebrewing conversation and into the professional brewing conversation, the original craft brewers, kind of the pioneer craft brewers in the industry, had that problem where, one, they had to educate the consumer, but they also had to kind of compete against this immovable object that was the large-scale macro breweries.
Yeah, it wasn't so much, it was an immovable object, but it was the mentality, the consumer mentality, more so than, the big brewers kind of having captured the imagination. It wasn't just beer that captured the imagination, the big beer, it was big food. It was cheese or coffee or bread. I mean, it was Wonder Bread. It was an era of Wonder Bread and Velveeta cheese and
industrialized food
instant
products.
Coffee, and that was cool in those days.
Yeah.
I mean, because there was a whole generation that came out of a period of time when they were denied and they were deprived of little luxuries, and when all that stuff came out, it was so cool. And now we've gone past that, but it was it seemed like an immovable object, immovable mentality, but slowly.
Yeah. It takes a lot of work, I think, to do that, like initial education, right? Letting people know. And we heard about this from New Glarus last year at CBC, right? How hard it was to go out and say, this is craft beer.
Right.
This is how it can be different.
Nobody,
Slowly, over decades, changing that mentality.
Only the most unusual, geeky, eccentric person really kind of we could relate to now.
Right. Like, that sounds like a fun person.
I mean, most people were like, their comfort zone was just drinking what they were always drinking, what they were always doing. It was kind of weird to be different. We live in a whole totally different culture right now, which is partly it's driven craft beer, and craft beer has had a significant effect on shaping that culture too.
Yeah. So let's kind of talk about where we started. You're an executive producer on a new documentary short film that you guys are showing here today at the Craft Brewers Conference.
Right.
Talk to us a little bit about that, because you worked with a lot of really the pioneers of craft beer. Jim Cook from Boston Beer Company, Kim Jordan from New Belgium, like the people who really started the movement. What were the challenges that they faced when they were trying to do what we're talking about, change the consumer's mindset and sell them something that they might not be used to?
Yeah, this film really, it's a 25-minute documentary on just people you just mentioned, Larry Bell, Kim Jordan, Jim Cook and Ken Grossman, and what they went through in the early days, and they're there talking about it, and they're not only talking about what they went through, but how they felt.
Right.
And which is really important about kind of getting the gut experience of what those early pioneers had to go through.
Yeah.
To not only, we were just talking about getting people interested in trying their beers, but getting the ingredients, getting the equipment.
Yeah.
You have to make your own equipment.
Right.
In some cases, you have to make your own ingredients.
Yeah.
And it was a different world, and people really thought it was a pretty bizarre idea, and you were going to fail. And nobody had any faith that this was going to be a.
That's got to be
mean,
hard.
Not nobody, but a lot of
Yeah.
you
A
know
lot of
the
people,
industry
yeah.
people, the money people, and
That's got to be tough doing something so challenging that you believe in so to kind of the core of who you are, but everyone around you is just telling you it's going to fail the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And they were able to kind of persist and push through that and make it work, which I think is the incredible part of the story. But I think even the industry today faces challenges. There was a quote from the preview that I saw of Kim saying it felt like death by 1,000 cuts, and you can kind of relate to that even today in the craft beer industry where, your consumer is a lot more educated and they understand, but maybe you're trying to do something a little bit weirder, even by today's standards. Putting Szechuan peppercorns in a beer is something that we do, and there's a little bit of a resistance to stuff like that. So even though we've come so far, I can definitely relate to a lot of what they're talking about.
yeah. Well, you said resistance. It's like a giant granite cell that you're in, and you got to get out. And they were all there. For the last 40 years of the history of craft beer and craft brewers, there has always been immovable objects. Even today, there seems to be immovable objects that are in the way for craft to kind of continue to develop. And the history of all those immovable objects, whether it's legislation or getting equipment or ingredients or technology or knowledge or getting customers or legislation, regulation, all those things, they were all overcome.
Yeah.
Because people in this business, because it's beer, I imagine other businesses too, but beer, people can get pretty passionate about it. And once you kind of connect with people that are holding the strings, so to speak, of opening doors, and they understand it, and they like beer, those immovable objects start moving. And
Yeah, I think I'm often struck by there's just a ton of passion in the brewing industry all the time.
Yeah.
But on both sides of the bar, right? You have brewers who feel very strongly about certain styles of beer, and then you have people who, it's connected to memories for them, right? Or when they turned 21, or when they got married, or it's just that the taste, the smell, it's all creates that kind of mental image, and people get passionate about it. They want their beer.
Yeah.
well, you got to just, I was talking in pretty abstract terms when I was just describing that, but you got to remember, homebrewing was illegal.
Yeah.
And the whole idea of brew pubs, making your beer and selling it at the brewery, was illegal everywhere.
Yeah.
How immovable does that seem?
Right.
And then you have to start, and you put your money, your family savings, and you go make this brewery with the idea that you're going to change the world. That's what it was like.
Yeah. A lot different than what it is like today.
Well, now, here we are. We're in CBC in Denver, Colorado. There's almost 100 breweries.
Yep.
In the Denver area, almost 400.
Brew
in
pubs
Colorado.
are legal.
Yeah.
Homebrewing's legal.
Homebrewing is now legal in all 50 states.
In all 50 states, there were a couple holdouts there for a while.
We're working on tap rooms in all 50 states.
Yep.
Yeah.
So where is craft beer? Where are we headed? What's the future that you see?
If you had a crystal ball and you were to predict another 40 years out from today, where are we? What does it look like? What kind of beer are we making?
Well, if I had a crystal ball and it was soft, I'd knead it and make a mug and fill it with beer right now. But, where is it going? It's still changing. It's still evolving. I mean, we live in a fairyland of beer right now. I mean, if you're a beer drinker, there has never been a better time to be a beer drinker anywhere in the world than the United States. So where is it going to go? There's still going to be still more small breweries that are going to open because there are a lot of communities and a lot of towns that still don't have a brewery. But every town pretty much has a restaurant or a hotel or, an eatery or, so why can't people still open up a small brewery? The thing that makes it work is this business model of tap rooms and being able to sell beer at a price that makes it a business model that works. 40 years ago, it would never work because beer retailed for, you could get a keg of beer, a half barrel of beer, for $30. That was the norm. Yeah. So in those days, when people were starting their small businesses and small breweries, that people saying it's not going to work. You're only getting $30 retail for a keg. Let's say $60 for a barrel of beer. Now,
it's like a third the cost of what it is to make it as a small brewer.
Now, the average price of a case of beer is probably about $500 or $600 a barrel that sells for retail. And then if you have a tap room and selling really special beers, $1,000 or $2,000 a barrel. And that kind of sustains a totally unimaginable business model back then. So where's it going? The regionals, the bigger ones are going to have to figure out how to continue to connect with their fans, which they will continue to do, but they're going to have to evolve and keep up with the culture. The big breweries, they're going to continue to lose market share as long as they continue to try to push very light-tasting American lager as their lead products. I don't see any end to that for a while.
So I mean, I'm kind of interested too because there's been a lot of changes and trends in the beer industry throughout the years, right? Some of them stick, some of them don't. There's black IPAs, there's hazy IPAs, there's putting glitter in beer. What's been your favorite kind of odd beer trend that maybe didn't stick around that kind of came through and left the industry? Is there anything that kind of pops out as something unique that?
My favorite odd beer trend.
Yeah. Because I'd imagine a lot has come and gone in the last 40 years.
If you're a home brewer, trends don't come and go because you can keep.
Sure.
That's what I do. I still make my own beer after all these years. A batch of a month, 5-gallon batches. And the kind of beers that I make are trends that have come and gone. Like the old school pale ale, or an old school IPA, or English bitters, or a porter, or I have an Irish stout on draft right now. I have a German smoked lager. I have a American German style Helles Pilsner hybrid. But and they may have been trendy, but I kind of adapted that trend to my taste and the new experiences.
That's the great thing with home brewing is you can make whatever you want to drink.
You're immune from trends.
Yeah, you're immune from trends, I guess. You can make whatever you want.
I still enjoy going out and seeing what other people do. I love going out to the brewery you were at, when your brewery's out in Nevada. And all those spices and what you were doing with those spices was just phenomenal. It really balanced beers. So I still visit breweries, and I love learning every time I go. I go out, I visit a new brewery, and I'm still saying to myself, wow. There's some new ideas, new ways of doing things.
That's reassuring to hear that people are still pushing the boundaries.
Still, because there were herb beers and fruit beers back 30 years ago, but the ones that are being made now are different.
Right.
Trust me, they're different.
It's funny. I think probably a lot of homebrewers feel like start homebrewing, can brew our own beer, maybe we'll save some money, but then you want to go out, you want to see what all the commercial breweries are doing. And so I don't know. This is the same trajectory. So I feel vindicated in my visitation of way too many breweries, especially
Yep.
this week.
It's okay to visit
Yeah.
too many breweries,
Yeah.
or what you would think is too many breweries.
Well, Charlie, I want to thank you so much for creating some time for us, coming on Beercraft and
Cool. Yeah.
filling us in
Yeah.
on the industry. And so your documentary, you're showing it today,
Yeah.
at 4 o'clock,
Yeah.
for the love of craft.
Yep.
So if you're around
Yeah.
Craft Brewers Conference,
And if
Check it out.
anybody out there listening were interested in having a private screening at their local brewery or what have you, or their event, get in touch with the Brewers Association based in Boulder and express your interest, and might be able to work something out.
yeah,
That's great.
that sounds great.
That sounds great. Well, thanks again so much for your time. It's been great chatting with you. And we're also going to be live in a couple hours at 4 o'clock from Former Saint at the Hyatt Regency across the street from the Convention Center. Check out that show. We have some fun brewers lined up to talk to in a
great
little
slate
bit.
of brewers from all over the country. So we'll see you in a couple hours.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Where's my beer?